Hi, I'm Florence Theriault from Theriault's Dollmasters in Annapolis, Maryland, and I'm here to share with you today some of the wonderful dolls that are passing through our headquarters right now. I want to talk to you about some of the special features I found out about them, and if you're interested in learning more, please give us a call because we'll be doing a one-day seminar in Dallas on November 9th talking about many of these same dolls and actually show and tell, passing them around for you to see at first hand. I read a story several years ago about a couturier in France. This took place, at the turn of about 1890. And this rich woman from America was traveling in Paris, and she was invited to a ball, and she needed to have a special gown to wear to the ball that very night. So she went into the couturier shop, and she said, I must have this ball, I must have this gown, I must have you make it immediately, I must have it, it must be perfect, and the finest fabrics, and all of this. And he said, oh, madam, it's not possible. C'est impossible. It's not possible. I cannot do it in that time. And she said, yes, I must have it. So he finally gave in, and he said, okay, I will make the gown for you. I will have it ready. Return back here at 6 o'clock this evening. She returned to his establishment, his atelier, at 6 o'clock that evening, and he presented her with an absolutely magnificent gown. And she tried it on, and it was perfect. Everything about it was wonderful. And then he presented her with a bill, and she gasped. She said, but so much money just for this little piece of fabric, this little bit of silk, this little bit of lace. And he looked at her, and he calmly took the dress from her, pulled a ribbon off of the dress, handed it to her, and he said, madam, the ribbon is free. And I often think about this when I think about the wonderful costumes we find on our antique dolls. And I wanted to just begin my talk today by showing you a few bonnets that, to my way of thinking, make a doll even more beautiful than she already is. This beautiful Gemot Triste with her wonderful mohair wig, and then we slowly turn her around, and you can capture the bonnet she is wearing from all angles. And could you talk about the value of a bonnet like this? No. The pieces that are on it, these are free. These are free. It's the way it is put together. There was an article recently in the Washington Post about this group of people in France who have just been awarded the special designation called, in English, I'm not going to say it in French, the best craftsman of France. And there's everyone. There's a man who sells chickens. There's a corsetier. And there's a man who makes baguettes. And they interviewed him to say, well, why, what is so special about your baguettes? And I wanted to read you the quote that he said, because it's the same concept as the bonnet is free. He said, the ingredients of a baguette are not expensive. What is expensive is the transformation. The savoir-faire is priceless. And in judging our beautiful dolls and the costumes they wear, the savoir-faire is priceless. The ribbon is free. Here's another bonnet that will be appearing on a doll that we are going to be offering very, very soon. And this bonnet has this wonderful woven base and a very intricate design, decorated at the crown with velvet, hand-painted little pansies, having a special dark velvet border, and then wonderful gray ribbons and bows and long streamers to tie on her. So in all of these things, I can say to you, judge your dolls. Do not say, that's just a simple little bonnet or a simple little dress. What's so wonderful about it? No, the ribbon is free. The ingredients are not expensive. The savoir-faire is priceless. As many of you know, much of the history of dolls is embedded in the fashion world. To many people, they believe this is how the actual doll, the lady doll as we know her, evolved from being presented first as a fashion mannequin, then being given to children to play with, and then eventually an entire doll industry growing up. This is why we find such exquisite fashions on so many of our early dolls, and why I think it's a wonderful search for anyone. We have a tendency to want to concentrate on the faces of the dolls, and as exquisite and beautiful as they are, please remember that when the doll makers about 1860, 1870 were first designing their fashion dolls, their preoccupation was on the body of the doll. They wanted to find a method that would allow them to have a body that was realistic, but that a child could dress and undress, and that would show a costume to its fashionable and best advantage. And here we have a beautiful example of a Gaultier fashion, a very generic face. This face appears over and over again, but because of her costume and the way it is presented and draped and placed on the doll, she turns into a magnificent work of art. Here in a beautiful aqua silk, and please note that we have the little overskirt that comes almost to the front. We have this wonderful detail of the skirt down at the front. We have all hand-cut, scalloped edging, and then gathered with a little cording and piping at the bottom. Wonderful Alençon lace decorating the front of the dress and the cuffs, and then turning the doll around. Look at the magnificent demi-train that follows, and now an extra row of ruffles is added, and the row of lace at the back. I really don't know how you manage to even walk down the stairway without gathering a lot of dust, but different times, I guess. And always when we can find the dolls with their wonderful original wigs, we're so thrilled, because this just really, they're just perfect little wigs. That wig making industry was an entire industry in itself in France at the time, and then later extending into Germany and England as well. I always like to think that they say that the finest mohair wigs came from the underbelly of the mountain goats, and I just like to think of those little goats that let somebody cut their underbelly hair to make a wig for a doll. Kind of nice. She has wonderful jewelry as well. Dolls tell their story very often by the costumes they wear, although we don't always have the complete detail of their history. We wish we would. We were called to look at a collection actually nearby our offices about a month ago, and when we came to the home, there really were not very special dolls, except lying on a table were this magnificent couple, the Marquis and his wife, the Marquise, dressed in their original French clothes as they were first made about probably 1889 for a Paris exposition. We have seen this costume, this exact costume, on a smaller version of this doll twice before, but never on one this fine, and I have never actually seen his wife, the Marquise, with him as well. And please, let me just slowly turn it around so you can see all of the detail of this extraordinary costume. A rich, rich burgundy velvet lined on the inside, wonderful little pants with the little buckles down at the knees, the gold metallic braiding and thread, and even the little pockets, faux pockets, I should say. His lace jabot and his wonderful ivory silk fowl vest, faux vest, with metallic threading on that. His wife, her costume is stunning, and you really, I hope you have an opportunity to come to see this doll in person so you can see the wonderful detail. Hand-painted designs on the silk, a rich, rich ivory silk satin. But now, turn this doll around and look at this. At the back, the beautiful constructed bustles that if you wanted to, you could have puffed out like that, but beautiful construction, and you really need to see how wonderfully put together these are. Very, very intricate. Someone said once, a French design and costume, this has always struck with me as being something really, really important. The French always knew how to take something right to the brink and then stop right in time. So they have these wonderful, extravagant details, fine craftsmanship, but always just don't go over the top. And these dolls are a perfect example. And when I said we know somewhat of their history, well, we can imagine their history because we know from the face and the body the time period that they were made. We know that these were very large size, luxury models, and so we can presume that these were likely made as exhibition models and probably for the International Exposition in Paris in 1879. Of course, I'm always talking to you about how many of the doll makers at the time were more concerned about the bodies of the doll and the costumes they wore than they were their face. But then along comes a doll like this, and you just say, wow, that face, that is extraordinary. And it takes you about 3 minutes of gazing at her before you decide to look at her wonderful, original, big, plump child body and her wonderful, original costume of white piqué. And again, look, the doll, yes, and the bonnet is free. The wonderful bonnet that frames her face. She has this beautiful pale bisque, a very early Jumeau, a very extraordinary doll, being sold from the family of the original owner. I wanted to show you just a few features, unusual features about dolls and costumes that are something you might look for, because as you go along learning more about dolls, these are things that maybe you just never had an opportunity to see, so I want to point them out to you. You might someday come across a little Jumeau, and she will have this band in her hair. I just wanted you to know that was an original band that appeared on the Jumeau bébés. And look, when I remove the band, you can see why they did it. This was where the band of stitching went on the original wig, and so in order to hide it, they would put this original band on here. You very, very seldom ever find them, so when you do, a really good extra feature on a doll. Jules Steiner of France made such wonderful dolls. And what is interesting about them, and I'm going to talk to you more about this when we come and talk about the German dolls later, is the variation that you could find. And you as a collector, you have to choose what you like best. He made this particular little Series C Steiner, a very, very beautiful, sweet-faced child with a gentle smile, but it was made with two ways. It was made with the classic paperweight eyes that appeared on French dolls of this 1883, 1885 period, and he also made it with his wire lever eyes, which were put into the doll in his own particular technique. And as soon as I'm able to get around to the wire mechanism here, I'm going to open and close her eyes so you can see how a child would play with this. When you have these dolls, you might want to look at them, look inside the wig at the back of the head, and you'll find the name J. Steiner on the back of these eyes. And I'm just going to turn around so you can see how I'm doing the lever mechanism at the back. I can imagine how a child must have been extremely, extremely careful, or perhaps never allowed to play with their doll, in order to have these still surviving today. And she is another example with a very, very beautiful wig. And if we can stay with the Steiner family for just one moment, look at this little doll in an original, kind of tattered little box with a French label on it that basically says, "I can be undressed." And indeed, it's okay if you undress her, because she owns not only the wonderful little bonnet and costume that she is wearing. I swear this doll has never come out of the box. A little matching hat, matching lace-trimmed frock, little shoes, but she also has another little costume, a little dress, and this precious little milliner's hat. Very, very wonderful little original owner doll. I wrote a book once on miniature dolls, and I called it In the Palm of the Hand, because I think the special charm of these little dolls is that they fit right in the palm of your hand. Even if you were a child, they would have. And that would have been a very intimate thing for a child, to be playing with a doll that was so proportioned to her size. And then I wanted to show you surprises, really wonderful surprises that can happen sometime when you're collecting dolls. So we had this doll come in, and I said, "Look at that doll. She has this wonderful silk coral dress on her with the original lace, a German doll, but obviously made at the time period and in the facial style to compete against the popular French dolls of the period, with a very distinctive French-style frock with a dropped waist and the pleating, and very, very much like would have been appearing on Jumeau dolls at that time. When we undressed her, look what we found underneath. Her original factory chemise, again looking at almost exactly like the original Jumeau chemises of the period, with a muslin with a little pleated bottom and the maroon strips down the side, and her little original French-like looking shoes. So those are little surprises. Always you need to go a little bit deeper sometimes on dolls to find things, whether it's the braid in the hair, or whether it's sleeping eyes that might be signed, or whether it's a doll with a little secret second costume under her other wonderful costume.